Good morning, viewers. Welcome to Frankly Speaking with Vibhuti Jha. I hope you have had a great weekend and you are looking forward to your week ahead. But today, let's talk about certain very important issues that definitely must concern us. As we all know that somewhere along the line, India, Hindus are under incessant attack for one reason or the other, as you may probably have noticed. And one of the recent fashion in America, I call it a fashion, because it has become fashionable to attack India on caste basis. So if you tell your American friend you're a Hindu, they say which caste you belong to. There was a very nice article written by somebody. I don't need to quote here, but it's on my tweet. If you want to access it, I will give you that information. But her daughter and she were asked, what caste are you? And when she explained that there is no caste system in India, it's a jati thing, profession, occupation, the American friend was disappointed because he or she did not fall into the stereotyping of caste. And we know that in California, we have had serious discussions in Santa Clara about declaring caste as a so-called, if I may say, a national monument, is the status that is being given to. Erroneously, of course. As much as one can laugh about it, it is not something to be taken lightly, and we as Hindus and Indians must contest it. So recently, Carnegie Foundation also did a research, and they came up with their findings. I have two guests with me today who represent Coalition of Hindus of North America, Nikunj Trivedi and Richa Gautam. So both of you are welcome. You have been here with me in the past, and I love to be in your company. If you want to be in my company or not, I don't know. But I like to be in your company because you make me feel young and enthusiastic about things. And this is a matter that will entertain you or engage you, or you will have to deal with it for a pretty long time. It's not going to die down. So you guys did a deep dive into the Carnegie Foundation report on this. Share with me your findings and share with me why the rest of the media is not covering it and what exactly is going on. Even Indian media is not covering serious findings of Carnegie Foundation as if it is, a laid back matter not to be worried about. So Nikunj, you take the first shot.
Namaste, Vibhuti. Thank you very much for always inviting us and giving us the voice. As you mentioned about the Washington Post article, I want to start with that. That was written by one of our steering committee members, Smita Rajji. Yes. And it was a real life experience that she encountered during COVID-19 when her son was taking classes online. And it essentially came up that, the Hindus are, they have four castes, Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishyas, and Shudras. So he asked her, like, what is my caste? And she basically said that there's really no caste, it's more about jatis and stuff like that. But he said, no, what about these four? And they said, well, technically we are Shudras. And his face fell and he was very disappointed. And he was, sort of felt like this internal low esteem, saying, oh my God, I'm like at the bottom of the pyramid, right? So this is the kind of stuff that gets peddled into American mainstream in the form of education. And it results into bullying and low self-esteem of Hindu kids. That is not fair to our community. It's not fair to American Hindu kids who are growing up here. And it provides a prejudiced view of the whole thing. So I wanted to start with that. And that's a very powerful article where she talks about her personal experience and why her lived experience matters quite a bit versus what the propaganda out there is on caste nowadays. Now, coming to the Carnegie Foundation's survey, and Richa ji is the expert on this, given her background and her research. But what I want to share with you is a few things. In there, overall, the survey has some very good findings. There are certain important things about the behaviors of Indian Americans in politics, behaviors of Indian Americans in modes of worship, or what they call prayer, although that category is not exactly accurate for us. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But one of the very important findings there is busting the propaganda that's out there about caste discrimination. In 2018 or 2017, I'm not exactly sure, Equality Labs, which is a sort of an organization that calls itself a South Asian power building organization, but has made very anti-Hindu comments. They had created a survey where it was a bias survey. And again, Richaji has more details on that, this survey basically said there's rampant caste-based discrimination exists in workplaces and other places. But Carnegie Endowment's recent survey showed, and especially footnote 29, basically showed that we should not rely on a survey like Equality Labs because of all the various statistical issues with it, but also the fact that it was very selective. If somebody did not agree with their narrative, they excluded them from the survey. So the Carnegie Endowment survey essentially demolishes that idea that there's rampant caste-based survey. There's also within that survey, although they focus on Hindus as part of the caste issue, which is something that we have a concern with, even within that sample, very small sample, they only found that maybe 5% of people in the entire survey felt some kind of a caste-based discrimination. Only 5%. Okay, so where's the rampant caste-based discrimination? We knew this from many years, but of course, nobody listens to the Hindus, unfortunately. Only when a Western reputable agency comes out with a survey that somebody actually listens to them. So we stand vindicated in that sense, because that's the position we have always kept in mind. But I'll stop here. I want Richa ji to share her thoughts on this as well.
Oh, thank you. And Richa ji, another thing which is very important in this matter is caste. You know, the Brahman, Kshatriya, Shudra, and Vaishya classification of that. It's a favorite theme of mine. And actually, I have talked about this classification with my American friends. And I'll share that secret with you after I hear the details of the Carnegie Foundation. Why is it important? And what must Hindus note about it? Because it's very rare that an American think tank or a study group gives a favorable report on matters that affect us, majority of us here, the Hindus and Indians. Most of them are biased, and unfortunately so. So share with us some highlights of that, and why must every Indian and Hindu read that report?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Vibhuti ji. And, even if they don't read our report, we did a tete-a-tete with Nikunj ji and me, just to kind of explain some of the key findings of the survey. And one important thing to note about the survey is that, it is a scientifically done survey, and, it is a prestigious organization. So we do have much to be happy about because of the findings of the survey, which are very similar to what we would expect due to the kind of, experience and, daily interactions that we have with our own community. So let me step back a little bit. So because this is an Indian American survey, they covered obviously many religious groups, but I'm going to focus a little bit on just the Hindu element because, I think, like I said, we found that based on the topic of religion, based on the topic of caste, and based on the topic of, say, discrimination, we found that the Hindus are probably one of the most liberal groups. I think we've noticed also a lot of atheism within the Hindus. They identify themselves as agnostic, and so a lot of them actually fall into that bucket as well. Only 54% of the people, Indian Americans, were Hindus, whereas if you prorate it or look at it from the Indian continent or in India, we should be close to around 70-80%, but a lot of them fall into the atheist bucket. But we are a very liberal group of people. We I think don't have religion as a top identifier for ourselves. Secondly, caste, I think most of the news in Carnegie Endowment is good news. I think the inherent bias of the survey is that they interviewed only the Hindu population within the survey for caste. I think that itself shows that, caste has become the N-word of the Hindus. We need to clearly tell that, this is not acceptable, just like, Smita ji has clearly written in her article that, this is causing us daily discrimination, daily, pain to our children. And we have to stop talking about caste as Hindu because it was a colonial imposition. It takes us back, just as it takes the, African Americans back to the days of slavery. It takes us back to the days of, when we had been colonized, and caste was superimposed on our society compulsorily. So that has to stop, even if it takes legal action, whatever it takes. Caste is not a Hindu word. And the findings of the survey completely, take care of just the what we have been crying hoarse, that we don't practice caste-based, either socializing. We don't practice caste-based, discrimination. We find when they surveyed us, the Hindus, for how we socially interact, culturally identify ourselves, caste was one of not a key marker in that process even. So that, and then the third, point I want to make is on the topic of caste is that caste, they surveyed us based on some of the key markers. Vibhuti, you have grown up in India, but we have been constantly filling up forms in our educational institution, in our occupational forms and things like that, where we know there are categories of SC, ST, OBC, and general, right? So Carnegie Endowment used that as a questionnaire. It's a very leading question to say, do you identify what do you identify yourself as? So most of us who came from India would definitely be able to answer that question. A lot of the second generation Americans, Indian Americans, were not even able to understand. Nikunj was one of them, he asked me, what is this general category? So basically, the fact that they are using these kind of Indian, categories of quota system in the US in itself is a flawed way of surveying the Hindus. So because 46%, even then, only 46% said, yes, we identify ourselves with caste, and of course, there is a skew towards those who came from India, our first generation, the second generation, and a lot of people refuse to answer that question. So the point is, stop trying to superimpose caste on the Hindu community. I think discrimination, Nikunj already covered. He already covered the point that Equality Labs the survey has been completely debunked. I have written personally as a survey analyst, I have written a report on how badly unscientific this survey is. And I think Carnegie Endowment really endorses our point of view, where they say clearly that this survey is skewed towards those people who are casteist. And it cannot be, because of the way it has been conducted, it cannot be projected to the entire South Asian or Indian population, or even the Hindu population. So there it goes. All of those resolutions, whether it's Brandeis, whether it's the California University or the Santa Clara Human Rights Commission, where they've been, talking about these statistics from this fake survey, I think everything needs to be challenged now based on this Carnegie Endowment survey. So that is, those are the, sort of good news. And we really have to, like you said, do two things. One is, of course, challenge these people. Secondly, we need to, make sure everyone hears about it through media reports. And, the reason probably they are not talking about it is because this does not align well with this, storyline that is being carried on about how Hinduism and casteism go hand in hand. This survey completely destroys that storyboard, that narrative, and that is why people are quiet about it.
Thank you. That was a wonderful explanation and creating the understanding what Carnegie research has done or survey has done. You referred to Equality Labs survey and that it was unscientific. Let me put it this way to you. Perhaps they never meant it to be scientific. They were trying to push through their agenda behind the nomenclature of a survey, quote unquote. But who knows? They are a private entity. They are not supposed to tell you who they interviewed, how many they interviewed. So it may be a sample of one was the representative for them. Who knows? But the point here is very important. And Nikunj, I would like to hear from you is, who pushes this kind of an agenda? What is the motivation for people to attack Hindus who are essentially the most liberal, peace-loving community in the world? I mean, I would proudly say that, and I would proudly defend that assertion of mine, because we are the most peace-loving. We are not the law and order problem in this country, hardly, apart from an occasional blue-collar crime. So I want to understand the motivation of those who are so primed against India. I mean, they're driven with the hate, for India, and it includes, they form a team of people who hate India. They become seemingly appear, rational and inclusive of everybody. They call themselves Indian American, but by the sideline, you will say Muslim Council. So that kind of a thing, which I notice, which is very, very disturbing. So it pertains to a dangerous path that we have to contest and challenge, as Richa mentioned just in a previous segment, that we have to become aware of the surrounding that we are in. I mean, we can be, like the marathon runner. If you are number one in the line, you don't look back to see where the remaining 5,000 are, but occasionally you've got to look back over your shoulder to see who is catching up. So we got to be cautious about the environment we live in, the surroundings we live in, and who is doing what to us and what against us. So take us a little bit, if you are at all aware or comfortable, sharing what is the driving negative element of these entities.
Sure. No, this could be a session itself.
Yes.
So what I'm going to try to do is attempt to just answer a few things. Like you said, this is a marathon, but we are not in the front. We are the ones in the back. So we have to look at everybody in the front rather than looking back on our shoulders. Now, having said that, a few things I want to say. See, these groups, right? Many of them operate in a sort of a nexus. They're connected across different types of, so-called South Asian groups. This includes many different types of people, and it's nothing against any religion. I want to be very clear on this. It's not about that. To your point earlier, you mentioned that, do Hindus commit crimes? Yeah, I mean, they're human beings, right? So Hindus, just like anybody else, commits crimes, or any kind of discrimination, right? But just like you would not say that about Muslims or Christians or Jews or Sikhs or anybody else, you cannot say that about Hindus as a population or as a religion. Okay, that the religion itself is inherently bad, or it needs to be dismantled, like what Equality Lab says. That when you say that, you are peddling intense hatred and Hindu phobia and bigotry against Hindus. So I want to be first very clear that we are not against any religion. Hindus have never been against any religion, any sort of like group of people out there as a total society. Okay, so I'll start with that first. Now, coming to the nexus, see what has happened is over several centuries, there has been essentially, if you look at colonization or even before that, there are two sides of this, right? There's a battle of sort of forces, essentially, in civilizations. You have a civilization and a thinking that embraces universality, right? Cultures, ekam satvi prabhuda vadanti type of idea, vasudhaiva kutumbakam, right? The entire family. But then you also have ideologies and thinking that is saying it's my way or the highway. Okay. Now that includes many, if you think about religious beliefs, but also you can think about ideological and political beliefs. Okay. So it's not just about religion, but it's also about politics, and it's also about ideological things. So if you throw in Marxism or communism, that's also part of that ideology that this is the way it is. Okay. Now, when those two clash, naturally one wants to win over the other, right? And it's usually we are the underdogs in this situation. So when you think about that, because of those exclusionary ideologies, they always look at Hinduism or Hindu Dharma, as I like to say, as the other and the one that needs to be dismantled. Because once you have an idea that this is the only final frontier that needs to be conquered, you try to dismantle that frontier in every single way possible. And one of the most important ways to do it is through propaganda, which includes propaganda in education and propaganda in society. So when Macaulay decided to change the education system, it had a huge impact, right? When the British decided to take the Manusmriti and say, this is the book for Hindus, and all laws about caste, all laws about society need to be done looking at this. On August 15th, 1787 or something, Lord Warren Hastings actually made a proclamation that says that for all matters related to law, the Shastra, as he said, which is a Shastra by Manusmriti, and the laws, the Gentoo laws, and the Quran of the Mohammedans needs to be referred to. So this made a huge impact on how Islamic or Muslim people were looked at in India, or the greater Indian subcontinent, as well as Hindus were looked at, right? So in that, the key was Manusmriti and the law of the Gentoo, the code of the Gentoo laws, which was created by the British, okay? So this became the infrastructure. Now, that essentially led to the idea that Hinduism or Hindu Dharma is inherently oppressive. The priests are what they call despots, right? The tyrannical people, the Brahmanical priests, as the word Brahmanism, by the way, was also invented by the British. And in my I'm creating a small booklet, I'm actually bringing out the research on this about how Brahmanism was created by the British. And this became the defining factor. This idea of Brahmanical patriarchy became a defining factor of what Hinduism is. So when you take that, right, that is projected in.
You froze.
He's frozen. All right, we'll continue the conversation. I think he will get back as soon as he does. Are you back, Nikunj? Okay, he's frozen. So let's continue the conversation and let him complete the thought when he comes back. But I am going to ask you and inquire about a thought that came to my mind. And I began to talk about it to most of my American friends about caste. So I told them, and Richa, you must tell me whether I'm right, wrong, or well, it is a nice point to talk about. I said caste system. I didn't say casteism. Caste system exists. I lost you for a while, Nikunj.
Yeah, my apologies. Something happened with my microphone. So
okay,
if I may continue my thought.
Yeah.
So what I was trying to say is essentially when the British set up this system, right, the product of it was impacted within South Asian Studies Department, Indology departments, as well as the dominant discourse about us as a people, okay? Because of that, this connection, generations of people grew up essentially thinking that Hinduism is casteism, and Hinduism, if you are a Hindu, you must have a caste, and you must be by default casteist, okay? And that discourse continues to be peddled by various organizations, you name it. And you may have anti-Hindu organizations and missionaries and those types of people who have a deliberate agenda of essentially converting us or destroying us. But you also have just benign people like this idea, like in school textbooks, that, oh, you know what, Hinduism has to be defined by caste, okay? So that's the result of 200, 300 years of policies and educational transformation, essentially. So that's where we are today. And that has created an entire ecosystem that supports each other, right? Then now you have people who consider themselves at opposition on the other side and say, well, I have been discriminated against by someone, and therefore I'm going to take that anger out on the entire Hindu community. So there are people like that, and we should not discount discrimination. There's no reason why we should discount it, because that's a fact of life. The fact that the marginalized jatis in India have faced discrimination, we cannot get away from that. But is it fault of Hinduism, or is it the fault of the entire Hindu population? That is what I disagree with, right? But these folks have made it, they've taken a small part and made it a big issue out of it, and have been using it as a weapon to continuously attack us again and again and again, so that we never have a voice beyond Hinduism being casteism. There's no conversation about yoga, there's no conversation about great achievements, no conversation about the influence of thinking from a Hindu perspective onto the Western world. All of those things are completely destroyed because it's all about casteism at the end of the day. And groups like Equality Labs have made it a career, not just a discourse, it's a career. That's all they do all day long. And they have a severe disdain for Hindus. That group has called for dismantling Hinduism as a religion, number one. They have called our festivals like Holi, Navratri, Diwali, etc., as inherently casteist, oppressive, etc., to the point where they say, and excuse me, this is very graphic that I'm going to say something, that during Holi, Hindus throw rocks and semen at women. Okay, imagine the graphic nature of this description and the impact on that on the minds of people, how sick Hindus are, essentially. That's the image that this group tries to portray about us. Now, how can you rely on that group's survey when they have such intense disdain? It's like saying, calling a white supremacist and saying, go do a survey on Black people. Okay, and then taking that survey and making it official policy. So California Department of Education, Fair Housing and Employment, right? They decide to take a survey done by white supremacists to pass policies on Black people. Okay, do you think that's going to be acceptable? Absolutely not, because there's inherent bias and inherent disdain for a group of people by the people who are conducting the survey. So for Hindus and Indian Americans in general, and the mainstream Americans in general, we need to understand that the group that has done the survey, Equality Labs that has done the survey, has intense disdain against the people who they're surveying and talking about. So there is no way you can rely on it. So this nexus, unfortunately, what they do, and to finish my thought,
Yes.
what they do is they take this data and then they amplify it. So Pramila Jayapal was the first one to officially launch the survey and help the survey become bigger. Then came groups like the Indian American Muslim Councils or Audrey Trushke types of people around, not just her, but in general. So, and then the media, right? So it became one of those lies told 1,000 times becomes the truth in that sense. It continuously, and unfortunately, no Indian American organizations severely challenge it. I'm not gonna say no, but most Indian American organizations did not challenge it by tooth and nail in that sense. That's why we are today where we are. And today in America, we are going to be facing a situation where laws are going to be passed against our community. So if you are a hotel owner, if you're a motel owner, you decide to hire somebody and then you fire that person can go and say, you know what, you made me clean bathrooms, you made me clean this because I was a low caste. Okay, that can happen. And then the feds are going to show up on your doorsteps and say, you have been guilty not only of labor laws, but you've been guilty of caste discrimination now. That's what's happening in BAPS. That's what's happening with Cisco. That's what's happening with all the different laws that are being passed. Basically, it's going to be, Hindus are going to become a suspect. If you're brown, if you're a Hindu, you're going to be a suspect as far as caste discrimination. So employers are going to be very reluctant to hire you because they are concerned about caste discrimination. And I'm not making this up. It's all out there.
No, you are not. You are stating the truth.
And recently, just to finish that thought, the Harvard Law Review, okay, very prestigious publication, published a long essay that also relied on Equality Labs, arguing for Title VII protection of caste-based discrimination at the federal level, folks. So it's not that I'm just joking around and I'm sleeping and I have nothing else to do in life. Go out and do the research, read our topics, articles and stuff like that to show you what we are up against. So I'll stop here.
No, you have brought about a remarkably serious stuff, because this virtually threatens our existence and success in this country. It negates our success as if we are some kind of an evil people. My question here is, again, an inquiry mostly, is that who funds Equality Labs? Where do they get that money from? And the issue is also important, which you said it very eloquently, that no Hindu group even contested that. Forget about challenging. I think Equality Labs ought to have been sued to showcase where did they arrive at the conclusions. We must ask Harvard Law. What kind of a scientific evidence do you have to rely upon these eminent or prestigious institutions? So the Harvard Law is no longer prestigious in my point of view, because they are apparently absolutely being taken for a ride by an organization which has no locus standi to talk about the very people they are talking about. So the point of the matter remains, Richa, is that coming to you on this matter, it's very serious. It is virtually threatening our success and our achievements in this country, to render us, without any capacity to perform, if I may put it, or disable you, literally disable you. So the question here again comes out, what needs to be done? I mean, where are the prominent Hindus? Where there are 10, 15, 20 CEOs, which are very famous, high-flying CEOs of the company. Are they not contesting? Are they not saying that this is rubbish? Because they will be eventually affected. If they fire somebody, they will be affected. So the question is, where is the awareness? Where is the, the desire to nip these nonsense in the bud right at the outset, or as soon as it erupts? A stitch in time saves nine.
Thank you, Vibhuti. Actually, I want to just step back a little bit because, when you ask the question to Nikunj as to who are behind this, and of course, there are fronts to every, a revolution that is going on, but this is completely breaking America forces that I see. And I do believe that, like you said, Equality Labs, is it tied to George Soros? Is it tied to, some of these forces that are bringing the leftist socialist agenda into the United States? I think that needs a deeper investigation. But, there have been rumors about that around, that point. And the structure of Equality Labs as a company, is it a nonprofit? Is it a for-profit? It is a for-profit that tries to function and portray itself as a nonprofit fighting for human rights and whatnot. But it is also a technology security firm that is penetrating into the big tech, trying, with lots of different agendas. And then it, masquerades as an arts, offering arts platforms to young students to where they also have Hindu hating, India hating art in that in those exhibitions and that. So they do that as well. And then of course they masquerade as a human rights organization by doing these fake surveys and attacking us. Initially, they also had the critical race theory on their website. They've completely cleaned it up. And now, like you said, they seem to come only as a South Asian organization, but they have had a broader agenda. And, there have been various investigations on how this organization funds and how it tries to get Title IX funds, and a lot of infiltration into the into the political systems, into the government networks, whatnot. So this is absolutely one of the big front organizations, and that is doing the work. And of course, like I said, the Breaking America forces have been attacking our capitalistic structure and our business models, and with this welfare packages, I think the inflation, we have never seen this kind of inflation. So this is a bigger agenda. We are just small fry. We are I'm missing that word. We are collateral damage in some ways, but of course there are the progressive left is the second political group that is working very strongly towards bringing that leftist socialist agenda into the country, and that group comprises many of the Kashmiri separatists. It comprises many of the Khalistanis and, some of the left liberals of India, so all those together are a very potent mix of people who are attacking us. When to me, when Appu from Simpsons went out of business, to me, that was a sign that, they want to remove that tag of model minority, a hardworking immigrant, slightly funny, slightly, benign. And they wanted to remove that and then put Quantico and those kind of, Hindu nationalist and those kind of media, images of the Hindu. And they have pretty much succeeded, to malign the Indian American community and to create a suspicion against any Hindu organization. Even Seva was attacked. Ekal Vidyalaya is attacked as a Hindutva organization. So, as if Hindutva is a bad word, or, it is, that is exactly the kind of people that are behind it, So I think I've covered that. And the
Yes,
model
I wanted to,
I just want to
considering the
quickly
time.
add
Okay, go
that
ahead.
the model minority tag, even though they have tried so hard to, malign us, I mean, the fact that we remain a model minority is clearly coming out in the Carnegie Endowment Survey. So in terms of how the education is, the low crime rate, the interracial marriages, and people are so liberal in the Hindu community and even the broader Indian American community. So
Great.
I guess, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
great.
where.
Now, I wanted to throw a thought, the way I explained caste system to some of my American friends, and they seem to agree with that. The question is, we are not advancing that kind of an argument. I'm going to write an article on this. Every country has a caste structure. So when they asked me, you have a serious problem of casteism in your country, caste problem, I said, yes, we have a problem. I'm not denying that. As you rightly mentioned, Nikunj, earlier on, that there are discriminations happen all the time for one reason or the other. So I'm not denying that. But I'm saying that the caste system exists as a division of labor and the process of governance of a society. They said, what do you mean? I said, everybody from prime minister or president of a country to the lowest level of a government functionary in a county or a taluka in India, in a county here or a taluka there, everybody who is in the process of lawmaking, protecting the laws, and keeping the system to run smoothly, they are the modern Brahmins. They are the ones who are thinkers. They are the lawmakers. So they are the part of the system that creates the governance mechanism. And it belongs to every president, prime minister, and to the lowest level of the functionary is the modern Brahmin. So even a scheduled caste guy becomes an IS officer, he's in the governance category, he is the modern Brahmin. And everybody, black, white, any race, in the government, you are a Brahmin. Now comes the second category of Kshatriyas. These are the warriors. These are the people who are in the defense forces, or they are in the quasi-defense forces, or a bank security guard, or a gated community's control room. They're all protecting an asset and a life. And they run the risk of losing their life if the situation so demands. They are the modern warriors. They are willing to give their life to protect and defend an asset or a life. Third is the trade and commerce, the Vaishyas. So from from Ambani to Bill Gates and Warren Buffett and what have you, Elon Musk, or the guy who is running a mom and pop shop, or in India selling cigarettes and bidis in front of a restaurant. These are all indulging in trade and commerce. They are the modern Vaishyas. Everybody who is indulging in trade and commerce is a Vaishya. And then comes the Shudras. The Shudras are the service providers. That includes honorable bankers, honorable accountants, honorable IT services, honorable travel agents, and waste management, sanitation, everybody who is providing services. These are the modern Shudras. So tell me, which country of the world doesn't have this structure? So if tomorrow a military guy who retires from there joins the government, he migrates from being a warrior to a Brahmin. If he starts a business of a commerce and trade and commerce, he moves into the Shudra community. So there is no prevention in interoperability of one guy to the another person. But when you institutionalize it, which is what the British did in India, that you are condemned to being who you are. But in real terms, Biden's family is in politics. Ambani's children are in business. So there is a certain amount of propagation of the value systems. That accountant son becomes an accountant or whatever else. Nothing wrong in it. They say they kept quiet for 30 seconds. They kept quiet. They had no answer to that. I said, this structure exists. In India also, there have been legal protection provided to people who were really downtrodden, and the conditions are improving. My thought process is, in that context, is that we ought to educate them that Sanatan Dharma principle is based on science, totally science, unlike Abrahamic faiths. We did a show with Sanjay Dikshit on Jaipur Dialogue, in which we talked about it's not Hindu phobia, it's Hindu misia, hatred. because we are the only ones who subscribe to the scientific principles. Our faith is not based on a book or a diktat. Is that what makes them fearful of us? That with the advent of science and technology, we now know for sure that there is nothing special about Islamic cancer, Hindu cancer, or a Christian cancer, or a Jewish cancer. They hurt equally bad, unless there is something special about each one's. Likewise, on a doctor's table, doctor doesn't treat a person, he treats a disease. Whether it's ulcer is in any stomach. The question is that these are the things which are making people aware, and they feel scared that these blokes, without doing anything, will overrun us. That's why you are seeing a rise of belief systems which are changing from religion, established religion. Is that the fear that drives people against us, among other things? Richa ji, you go with that first. And we have a few minutes left. So be quick, succinct, and close.
I was always a backbencher in school. So
was I, because of my height.
No, what was the question again?
All right. Nikunj, she lost her chance.
No worries. See, what's important is, so essentially there are certain changes in ideologies, right? As the world is changing, more people are thinking more, what is my purpose in life? More technology is giving access to information that never existed before. So there's certainly the threat. Now, the reason I use the word Hindu phobia is because it's definitely Hindu media is there from a hatred perspective, but that's not the issue here. The issue is that they're trying to create fear about us as people, okay. And therefore they're creating Hindu phobia to show people to stay away from these people because they're casteist, oppressive, violent, whatever. So there are 4 C's. 3 of them were coined by Rajiv Ji, but Hinduism in India are evaluated by 4 C's. I put the 4th one in: caste, cow, curry, and chaos. Okay, so when you look at this framework, everything falls into those 4 categories when it comes to Hinduism in India. And that's why I'm calling it Hindu phobia, and we're calling it Hindu phobia, because you are creating fear about a population and people so that their words and their narratives are legitimately suppressed. Okay, they are institutionally suppressed and legitimately suppressed. And therefore, all the good things like yoga or vegetarianism or idea of Krinamantam Vishwamaryam, make the whole world noble, universal, are completely removed from this caste, cow, curry, chaos narrative. Okay, that's what's called Hindu phobia ultimately, and sure. That's what we are against essentially.
No, the other now this caste thing we have talked for a long while.
Yes.
A lot of things happened in India recently, and one of the things that happened was the Prime Minister called for a meeting of all the Kashmiri people, Kashmiri political leaders, not Kashmiri people. Kashmiri political leaders didn't call Jammu guys, didn't call Ladakh guys, didn't call Hindus, didn't call KPs, but to talk with only the leadership of Kashmir region. Called for a talk, and there was a tremendous amount of concern or speculation because agenda was not disclosed. So people were fearing that Prime Minister might agree to suspension of 370 and 35 due to international pressure and what have you. And that's why, what is the need to talk to these people and everything else? As it turned out to be, he virtually read them the Riot Act, that statehood will come only after elections are held. And elections will be held after delimitation of the constituencies are done. And it will also be predicated, and they will declare their statehood, have promised, will not remain a union territory forever, but it will be predicated also on good behavior. If you don't behave well, don't expect to get a reward. Apparently, this Riot Act was read. The language of the Abdullahs and Muftis was only because they expressed their frustration. They did not deny any of this. And apparently, Prime Minister and the Home Minister laid down the Riot Act by saying, we will do everything according to law. And the law exists of 370 and 35A. They were also told that following the delimitation of the constituencies, we will also bring about reservation in the manner that is prescribed in the Indian Constitution in Kashmir as well. So these people have all dispersed. There has been no major thing, and combine this with the major initiative launched by Sharad Pawar to bring about Mahagathbandhan 3 or 2 or 2.5. to oppose Modi in 2024, how do you think the alignment of the opposition parties will to dislodge Modi, as we know now with the toolkits coming out in the open? How is it going to work out? Do you think, in my opinion, it will not? Because unless and until, there are a couple of factors that can go wrong, but I feel that opposition of this quality, this type, will not work. And Kashmiris are now fully in favor of the integration with India. There is a likelihood of Jammu being declared independent and Kashmir separate. Ladakh already is. So you reorganize the structure of the state, and they are left with virtually nothing. So your thought?
This is for me, I guess.
Yes, good for you because you bunked the last question. So.
Yes. No, but about the last one, I just want to say one thing.
No defense. Come to the next question now. Yeah.
Yes. But dharma is the only way, the future is, with the artificial intelligence, the 360-degree view that we get of the world, of, every situation now, people are going to definitely come towards dharma. But coming to this topic, which, it is at this time with COVID, with the second wave of COVID and everything. I have never seen Modi government being as vulnerable as it has been at this time, in terms of even when I hear or see the tweets from even the people who used to support him have started to talk about him in ways. So there is a little bit of vulnerability there. Hopefully, once the COVID tide has actually started to ebb out, and we are hoping, that Modi government will come back stronger. I mean, they've already started this. This was their first big meet, the Jammu Kashmir meet, the first big meet after the COVID onslaught that happened to the world. So of course they are moving, they're working, and the process is on. And the opposition also, of course, is not going to sit quiet. So they are trying their bit to I think there are various things that they are trying.
I'll just update you on this. It's remarkable that the statistics of decline in COVID cases in India has been very rapid.
Yes.
Very rapid. So despite all the bust up and despite all this, chaos, which Nikunj had mentioned at one of the 4 C's, chaos in India on account of the second outbreak of COVID was also so highly manipulated. The High Court in Delhi castigated Kejriwal government for inflating the request and demand for oxygens by 4 times. He has been very severely castigated by the court, and the public impression has gone so much against him. It's not even funny that people were resorting to Greta Thunberg's leaked toolkit to denounce Modi in every single way possible. You are right. It seemed very vulnerable, but people forget the stats. United States.
Oh, totally. It is a media-created hype.
United States, despite having a hugely superior infrastructure, still maintains an unfortunate lead of more than 240,000 deaths over India. So the question is, how is it that India was suddenly in the second wave, as if it was a planned thing? We know now, if you read the literature of Nicholas Wade, is worth reading. He set a real disclosure that it is a man-made virus. It was tested on human mice. The mice which are artificially created with human DNA, they tested it. It's there now. So the question is how the world leadership will respond to it is a different matter. Nikunj, your thought on it?
So let's again.
I want to just complete some of the points. The question on the Jammu.
We are running out of time. I'm the boss, so you are now restricted.
No,
let's have
I just want to bring up just the fact that the delimitation process that they are going into at this time. I think it is very critical that they don't. If they base it on the 2011 census, that is definitely going to impact the way the structurally, how Jammu and Kashmir elections are held. And secondly, also the point that, when you say that Jammu can be declared as a separate state, I think there are various pros and cons, and it doesn't seem to be the right move, to, at least to me. And it's a very big conversation, but to isolate Kashmir out as a strongly majority Muslim state is definitely not going to be pro-India.
Okay, that we know. That's not a secret. Anyway.
It is not, but I'm hearing a lot of noise on Jammu being a separate state, but to me, that does not seem to be a good solution.
All right. Respect to your thoughts, definitely. Nikunj, your thoughts on it?
Yeah. So again, as an organization, we don't really comment on government policies as far as like the country is concerned. So same thing with the Modi government. What I will comment on the fact is whatever decision is made, whether it's delimitation or the reintegration, things like that, the Kashmiri Pandit, the Kashmiri Hindu equation is missing. Okay. Earlier you mentioned he met with all the Kashmiri parties and things like that. Where was the discussion about Kashmiri Hindus? So I come back to that saying, what about those people that still live after 30 plus years in ghettos in Delhi and other places? What about their rehabilitation, right? So we talk about minority rights, we talk about extreme minority rights, things like that. But here's a minority that has been discriminated, thrown out of their homes, and has not gotten that whole right back. So what about that minority being resettled into the valley?
That's a very important point. And because of time factor, I just want to bring one more topic. You said it very correctly. That's a fundamental issue in Kashmir area.
Yeah.
That despite being a minority, Hindus are part of majority. And Muslims who make up 95% of the population, they are reckoned as minorities. So you gain the best of both scenarios, which must be reversed. I totally agree with you. Final thought, you heard about it or not, I do not know. Mr. Ravi Shankar Prasad, who is the law minister of India, and India has been in a battle with Twitter with reference to its own code of conduct. You may be aware of that. So Twitter was told to subscribe to the Indian laws. And they were having problem with that because they openly said that for us, our laws are more important. The question is the American law can't apply there, right? So Twitter suspended the law minister's account for an hour. It was odd. And law minister tweeted that, look at Twitter for suspending my law. And I tweeted on that. I said, come on, if this also doesn't inspire you to take action, what will? So I have openly said, Twitter is not an essential commodity. It's not a lifesaver. And if they have violated our laws, and that to the law minister's law, suspend Twitter for at least 7 days and then read them the riot act, right? What will happen? What is the worst can happen? So in my opinion, and the whole Vox Populi in India is saying, do something against Twitter, take some action. If not now, when? What do you think, Richa? What must happen? What must the law minister do? If the Twitter had done the same thing to you, what would you do? Other than bearing the woman's wrath.
Exactly. Beware of woman being scorned. I don't know. Someone said something like that. Beware the wrath of the woman scorned.
Right.
But, beyond that also, I do think that, big tech is a very evolving, evolving entity in general. And around the world, there has to be a control and censorship of how they have started operating as an alternative power center and source of, a lot of these censorships and whatnot. So, that they can suspend accounts like that of senior ministers, okay, Kangana Ranaut, fine, we take it, and then keep certain voices ongoing, whether they attack the government and falsely attack, like we saw that alt news case, whatnot. So the point is that, the framework of how how big tech operates within any country has to be developed and has to be evolved, and sooner rather than later,
Thank you. Nikunj, your thoughts on it?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's what Richa said. I have a lot more to add. Essentially, look, I work in banking. So when we sign a contract for New York banking laws apply, okay? Somebody from Mexico opening an account in New York is not going to tell me that I'm going to use Mexican law And by the way, if you don't agree with that, then you know what? I'm going to not work with you, right? That's not how it works. So if you are operating in a country, you have to respect the country's laws. And the law minister has made it very clear on that front. So I have nothing much to add, but on the big tech side, the idea is that you have to understand what's really happening and how they are growing and evolving into these multinational entities. It's essentially like a country, and they're going in and disintegrating certain things. The Breaking India book that Rajiv ji has written, they talk about the power of AI, and his new book as well, to disrupt a country and disrupt the government within the country. And here's a great example of how to use technology to disrupt some voices while encouraging some other voices. People who openly call for jihad, people who openly call for dismantling of Hinduism, they're not suspended. But here you're suspending a law minister. That's really where the danger comes in.
I totally agree with you. And I would urge both of you to read a book, rather old book. I read it, The Stories of the Economic Hitman. I mean, how the people were hired to create conditions of disruption in other countries or regimes where you did not agree with. So, to my mind, and I totally am with you on this matter on local banking laws, because when I came in this country in 91, I was posted in California. I was located there. California has its own banking laws, and you could not operate according to New York state banking laws. It had to be California state banking laws. Believe it or not, Bank of America, that wanted to set up an NRI division in California, did not succeed, despite being a California-based bank. Whereas I managed to get it through the legal loopholes. I got the license for American Express to operate as an NRI license. And the Bank of America country manager, my counterpart, he came to me, to my office, and said, "How did you do it? You are in a New York institution. How did you do it?" I said, "Write the check for the consultancy, then I'll tell you." So I totally understand that part of it, how to, that was a major experience of mine in learning the laws and how to take advantage of that. There was one particular element I did, which floored the federal regulators, the California regulators, saying that, "Okay, you got us there, you have the license." So the point which I'm trying to say is, yes, rule of the land must be imposed. And I think Ravi Shankar Prasad, by not doing it, and I hope he does it. I mean, I'm not saying that he should take a rash action, but we must do something about it. It's not an essential commodity. Oil supply will not stop, food supply will not stop, and Twitter will stop for 7 days. That's all right. We can live with that. We lived without Twitter, isn't it? Hey, thank you very much, both you, Nikunj and Richa, for being here and tolerating my corny sense of humor at times, perhaps. And thank you, listeners, for being with us, viewers. Have a great week ahead. Talk to you next week. And thank you, Nikunj and Richa, for being with us again today. Thank you.
Namaste. Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Vibhuti ji. Thank you for having us.